Hello and welcome back to the channel. And let's start with our new uh, topic, which is water quality. So, today we'll be doing the introduction of the water quality, like why we are doing it, and we'll be starting with the physical parameters. So, yeah, so till now, what we have done is we have studied what are the sources of water, and we have done the sources of water are these, and then we have to, after doing the sources of water like rainwater, groundwater, surface water, now we have the water at some place in some kind of reservoir or in the river or underground. Now we have to test if it is fit for drinking or fit for any other purposes that we are that we are going to do in our daily routine, right? So we need to check the quality of water. So now we'll be doing the water quality, like what are the different water qualities that we need to check in order to um, tell that water is fit for our use. And then after the quality is checked, we'll be going through treatment, and then we'll be going through distribution, right? Now, so the part that we are going to discuss in this chapter is check the quality. That means water quality. That's why we are gonna, this is our third chapter. Now, like, why do we need water quality analysis, right? Why we are analyzing the quality of water? See, when we see a glass of water from the ground, let's say, it is crystal clear. So visually, it appears that it is fit to taste, or it is fit to our daily purpose, work or drinking. But in actual, we need to test it of certain chemicals that are present or not, which can be harmful for us if they are in uh, the higher than the recommended quantity. So we need to test, do some chemical analysis for the water. And sometimes, like river water or lake water, we see this is a little, it has some kind of color in it, right? So for example, if iron is present, the water will be a little bit into the yellowish browner tinge. So can we drink it? Like sometimes the water is good, uh, it appears bit dirty, but it's not harmful for us. But sometimes the water is crystal clear, but still if we drink it, it is harmful for us because it can contain some very dangerous chemicals. So we need to have the test of water quality. We should have some physical test, we should have chemical test that we'll be discussing, and then we should have further more tests also. So this is why we need to address the quality of water. We can't just simply use that like simple things. Now, what is water quality? So water quality refers to physical, chemical, biological and radiological characteristics of water that determines its suitability for a specific use. That's what I am saying. So now the use and the quality requirement. Like for drinking purposes, the quality is very high. We should only drink a very high quality water. For irrigation purposes, water quality can be moderate. I mean, there should not be much salts because that will destroy the roots of the plant. Okay, so but other than that, irrigation, water should not water if what even if water is not that high quality, it will be workable. Now, for industrial cooling, Cooling water can be of lower quality requirement. And then if we have to do construction, so it depends on application. Like if we are doing in we are using it in concreting, we should not have salty water, right? So that's what in construction it depends on the application where we are going to use that water. So this is what water quality is. It's physical, chemical, biological and radiological characteristics. Now we have the classification. So in which categories we can divide these qualities is, first is physical parameters. Physical, for example, we have the color, which we can just see and taste. So that from that we analyze, we call it physical. By seeing or by touching or by tasting we can judge it. So that's physical. And chemical is which is not visible, then we have to do chemically. So this is chemical analysis. And then we have biological analysis. So biological is also not visible, right? But uh, it's harmful for us. And then we have radiological. But in this subject we just need physical, chemical and biological. Radiological we don't have to just we don't have to consider that much, so we'll be leaving radiological. Just you should know that there is some kind of water quality parameter which is called radiological, but we don't test it right here in this subject. Now, physical parameter overviews. So what are the physical parameters that we are going to see in this chapter? So that is, first is suspended solids, and then we have color, and then we have turbidity, and then we have taste and odor, and after that we have the last one, which is temperature. So this is how there are 5 kinds of physical parameters of water quality that we should know and we should test it. So suspended solids is the one. Color, we need to check the color. Turbidity is the amount of light scattering or absorbing, so that's turbidity. And then we have taste and odor, and then we have temperature. So we'll be discussing these one by one. So the very first one is suspended solids. So suspended solids uh, is nothing but these are the particles which are suspended in water, and it just simply does not dissolve. So uh, for any kind of solids, if we tell that as for example total solids, so if we put some solids in water like we put soil, okay, and then we mix it into the water, then some part of the soil will get settled and some part will get suspended and some part will be dissolved. So total solid is nothing but dissolved solids, and then we have suspended solids, settlable solids, and like which is not dissolved, other than not dissolving are all the in the undissolved form, which can be in the form of suspended or can be in the form of the suspended solids. Only after some time they will be settled down. So we have total solids, nothing but dissolved solids and suspended solids. Okay, so the dissolved solids are not a problem here, that will be checking after that, because it comes under the chemical and biological criteria. Suspended solids is the physical one, okay, because we can just remove it by settling or giving it some time to settle. So we can see here, for example, see, we can see suspended solids. See, this is a clear river, and here we can see there is a river which is mixed with soil. Okay, so these are the suspended solids, and suspended solids can uh, have of sand, clay, silt, organic, and algae. So sand, clay, silts are inorganic solids, right? This is not made of organic. Organic debris, algae, even planktons. So these are what? These are organics. Solids, right? So this is how the thing work here. Now these you can see the water in the rainy season, the river color becomes something like this, because river is bringing lot of solids and suspended solids which are coming to the plains. So this is how the suspended solids into the river look like. And the sources are runoff from rainfall, and then soil erosion, just because there are lesser trees now on the hills or on any other area. So the river is the exposed to the open soil, because there are no plants or trees. So the soil erosion is the main problem, which is bringing the suspended solids into the river. And then we have industrial discharge. So industries also throw their discharge into the water, and which can have suspended and dissolved both kind of solids. And then we have domestic wastewater. In domestic wastewater also there can be suspended solids, and because like we do washing of the area around us, the cleaning, the mopping, right? So everything gets some suspended solids, and it will be added to the full bigger source. Now, and then natural weathering of rock and sediments, these also bring the suspended solids to the river. So when high suspended solids are there in the river, what happens? What is the issue that is creating due to that? So it's, first of all, it's increasing the turbidity. Like, you can't see through the water, it's not clearer anymore. So more the suspended solids, more the turbidity is there. And then it reduces the light penetration. So light penetration is a very important reason for the aquatic life to be alive into the water, right? So because aquatic life, example fishes and other water creatures are dependent on the sunlight. If sunlight, because of that, oxygen and everything is making up into the water. So if sunlight is not, because suspended solids are all like almost all over the area, the sunlight is not reaching to the aquatic life. So that also is creating a big issue. And then we have effects, aquatic life and habitat. So this is the impact of this. And then we have transport of pollutants and pathogens. So in some area, for example, there is some issue. For example, there are some pathogens or some disease that's going on with these suspended solids through the river. That disease can, or the pathogens can travel across so many areas, because suspended solids are there. That can be organic, right? So pathogens are organic, they can also travel. So that creates an issue. And now we have increases water treatment cost. More the suspended solid, more the cost will be there to remove the suspended solids. So it's increasing the water treatment cost. Now we can see the clear water versus suspended solids. So you see low suspended solids in the area, you can see everything beneath, so it's clear. And this is somewhat, you can see here, so this is somewhat like this only. So it is high suspended solids, right? So yeah, so this is what suspended solid is. Now sources, as we discussed earlier, rainfall is the biggest source nowadays. Because of that, because there are less plants, so there is soil erosion, and then that eroded soil comes mixed with the river, and then it goes as a suspended solid. So you can see this should be a clear water river, right? This should be a clear water path, but now it's, what is this? It's full of suspended solids. So these are the sources of suspended solids. Now, what are the effects of suspended solids? So there are two kind of effects: environmental and then treatment. So environmental effects are, if there is high suspended solids, there will be reduced light penetration, And then if penetration is not going on, because aquatic uh, life is also dependent on photosynthesis, the plants, the algae, everything. So less photosynthesis is happening, and then it is damaging the aquatic ecosystem. So it's affecting that. So environmental effect is this. Now from for treatment purposes, so suspended solids are high, so there will be more coagulation, then there will be more treatment cost. We need to add more coagulant to that, so there will be higher treatment cost in this case. So these are the effects of environmental and then treatment purpose of suspended solids. So in any case there should not be more suspended solids. That is the ideal case, but it is not in reality. So yeah, now we have the next topic, which is the next physical parameter, which is turbidity. So you can see the turbid water and you can see the clear water. Right. So here you can see there is high suspended particles. There is a cloudy appearance. Light cannot pass through it clearly. It will not go, and it's low visibility. You can't see clearly what's around, like on the other side of the water is. But in clear water, everything is opposite to that. Right. So clarity of water determines its quality and suitability for use. And turbidity is nothing but its ability to water's ability uh, to scatter the light. So turbidity is nothing but to scatter or absorb absorb the light which is incident on it. So this is nothing but the turbidity is. So turbidity is one effect of the suspended solids, right? And this also comes under the physical parameter. Now we have measurement of turbidity. So turbidity is measured by two things. So we have the very first one, which is nephelometry. So we have measurement of turbidity in the form of, first is nephelometry. So the concept behind this nephelometry is, see, we have a light source and then we have slit. Okay, so we have slit, and then after that we have uh, our turbid sample. So it is having turbidity in this. So the light source throws light like this. Okay, and we have, like, we'll be putting our detector or phototube, we call it. So the detector will be placed at 90 degree. This is phototube or detector. This is our light source. This is slit, and this is our water sample. Alright, so the light, when incident on the sample, there will be particles there. Okay, and if the light it is incident on the particle will reflect it. So the lights which come into 90 degree direction, and I mean on this phototube, will be captured. So this is nothing but the light which is getting scattered. So let's say the incident light is of intensity P, and the light which came out is of intensity P naught. Okay, so the ratio P naught upon P is determining the turbidity. For example, if more the light is scattered, P naught, right? If more P naught is coming in comparison to P, I mean the light which is incident mostly is getting reflected back. That means more are the particles there, right? So this is nothing but P naught. If P naught is more, then P naught upon P will be more, and it will tell that turbidity is more because more particles are present. That's why more light is getting scattered. So that is why turbidity is more. So this concept is known as nephelometry, and nephelometer is based on this concept, and the unit which will be measured through this kind of meter will be NTU, nephelometer turbidity unit. So this is the unit in which this kind of turbidity principle works. And in the second thing we have, so in the next thing we call it uh, turbidimetry. Simple. So second one is turbidimetry. So the concept behind turbidimetry is like similar. We have the source, and then we have the slit out of which the light is coming, and then we have our sample. But in this case, the detector or the phototube is present on the line of incidence of the light. Okay, so it's not at the 90-degree, it is exactly into the uh, line of incident of light. So in this, when the light is coming through the through the slit and it reaches the sample, it strikes the particles if the particles are there, and most of the light will get scattered. So the light which comes after that, so the most of the light will get scattered in this as a direction, but the light which gets absorbed and comes out is measured here. So P is more, and then the coming out, that P naught. The more the light is absorbed, the light which is remaining is coming out. So that is P naught. So in this case, P naught upon P is the ratio which we are going to measure. So if more the light is coming out, that means P naught will be high. So more the light that like for example in the for of the incident light, most of the part comes out, that is P naught. So it was not absorbed by any particle or scattered by any particle, the light came directly. So P naught is more in that case. So if P naught is more, then what we can say that there are less suspended particles. That's why the light came, most of the light came out, right? That means it shows that turbidity is low. So in this case, in the nephelometry, P naught upon P, if it is high, turbidity is high. But in turbidimetry, P naught upon P is high, that means turbidity is low, right? So this is what turbidity is measured how in this turbidimetry process. Now, Jackson's turbidity meter, Jackson's turbidity meter is based on this principle only, principle of absorption, right? So this is absorption, and whichever is light which is coming out, it's not absorbed. So this is Jackson's turbidity meter, and the unit of these kind of meter is JTU, right? And in simple, in general, the unit of turbidity is milligram per liter. That means how many milligrams of suspended particles are there into 1 liter of solid. So this is nothing but JTU is the way of telling the unit in terms of turbidity metry concept, and NTU is the way of saying the unit in terms of nephelometry concept. So this is how the turbidity is measured. So I hope you guys understood what the turbidity is. Now let's move on to the third topic, which is color. So this is the third parameter. So color in water is not always harmful, right? But it's not aesthetically pleasing for our eyes, so that we can tell it that it's fit to use. So for example, see, this yellow to reddish color brings tells us that there is a presence of iron compound. Okay, and then if there are humic substances, so we'll be getting a brown tea colored water due to dissolved humic and fulvic substances. That is, it is nothing but organic matter. And industrial waste is there, so it may show various colors like blue, green, red, black, etc. It depends on the type of industries and chemicals present. So this is what color in water means. Now we have, yeah. So let's understand like how the color is measured. So for measuring the color, we have the thing, and the unit for the color is TCU. TCU. So that means true color unit. This is the unit of measuring the color. So this is for measuring the color, and we call it true color unit. So yeah, color comes due to the presence of dissolved solids into the water, right? So we use standard here of potassium chloroplatinate, potassium K2, K2 PtCl2, and we use cobaltous chloride, hydrous one. So cobaltous chloride COCl2.6H2O. So these are the in the lab. Okay, we have to measure the color. But how will we generate uh, what is there in actual in the reality? It's closer to reality. So we have to put certain chemicals uh, that brings actual colored water which is naturally present around us. So the color that comes chemically that we are generating into the lab is due to these two chemicals, potassium chloroplatinate and cobaltous chloride, and we get a yellowish tinge into the water that's naturally present into the water. So this is the replica that we are creating into the lab, and with this replica we'll be creating different dilution solution. For example, this is 100% dilution, this is 100% standard sample. This is our standard sample. Now with this we'll be creating different dilutions. For example, first dilution is like 100% of this only, and then we'll be doing for example 90% of this and 10% of water will be mixing, colorless water. So that this is next dilution, and then we'll be having for example 50-50. So we'll be creating different dilution sets, and then we'll be bringing our sample water, and we'll be just comparing with the different dilution set to the sample water, and whichever color is matched will be calling as true color unit of that water. Okay, so we'll be creating around like 10 to 20 dilutions. Every dilution will have different color depending on how much water is there. So with that, the our sample water from the any rain or drain or any river, we have brought that, and we'll be just comparing it visually to the to all the dilutions which are present, and from whichever dilution it matches, the color matches visually, we'll be taking that as true color unit of that sample, the dilution which was there, right? So with this, now let's move on to the next topic, which is our next parameter, which is taste and odor, right? So the taste, how it comes to the water, and odor, how it comes to the water. So causes are there. H2S, it brings the odor of rotten egg, and then we have chlorine, it brings the bleach smell. Then we have algae, it will bring the taste earthy or fishy. And then we have organic decay, will be having musty taste and odor. So taste and odor is also one of the major criteria that we need to have. So let's see how we measure taste first. So the taste is measured by FTN. So FTN is flavor threshold number, right? So FTN is nothing but flavor threshold number, and it is calculated by A plus B upon A, where A is A is the sample water. I mean the dirty water, for example, which is having the taste, and B is the dilution water that we are going to add. In this case, we have distilled water, right? So A and B are these things. Now, for example, let's say we took the tasteful water of 10 ml, and we added 1 ml of dilution water. Then FTN will become nothing but 1.1. This is FTN. So what we are doing here is we took 10 ml of water and we added 1 ml of distilled water and we mixed it, and then we tasted it, and the taste was fully disappeared after adding just 1 ml of water. Then the FTN number for that sample will be 1.1. Okay, but in some case, like if we added 1 ml water that and we tasted it, the taste was still there, then we'll be adding further dilution, like further distilled water in that. So in that case, for example, if we added FTN, that's like for example we added 5 ml of distilled water, then it becomes 1.5, right? And I mean 10 ml sample water, and we mixed 10 ml of distilled water into that, and then we tasted, the taste disappeared. Then we'll be taking FTN as 1.5, not 1.1, because at 1.1 there was some taste. Okay, and then for example it's still not disappeared, we had to add in 10 ml sample, we had to add 100 ml of dilution water, and then it becomes disappeared. Then the number comes as 11. FTN is 11. So what we can say here, that in 10 ml distilled water we needed to add 100 ml water. That means there was lot of taste which needed a lot of water to dilute the taste and that to disappear that taste. So the FTN is 11. Now there is one question: either FTN 1.1 is good for us or FTN 11. FTN 1.1 is better in terms of taste or FTN 11. So FTN 1.1 is better, right? We needed to add less dilution water. That means it was already in a good condition, right? And the water in which we added 100 ml of dilution water, that was in already that was in a poor condition, and we had to add lot of water in that, right? So FTN 11, the more the FTN, that means there is bad taste. So I can say that FTN is nothing but it's inversely proportional to the good taste. FTN is inversely proportional to good taste. More the FTN, bad will be the taste, right? So this is how we will compare FTN to the taste. Now we should move to the odor. So similarly, for measuring the odor, we have uh, TON, threshold odor number. Threshold odor number, and TON is also given by same formula, A plus B upon A, right? Where A is the sample water, B will be the water which is added for the dilution, and say in same conditions, for example TON, if I added 10 and then 1 ml and it got disappeared, it became 1.1. But if in 10 ml water I needed to add 50 ml, then it will be how much? Then it will be uh, 500, uh, 50 60 upon 10, that means it is 6, right? So yeah, so this is our threshold odor number, it becomes 6. Now I have to compare, is if 1.1 is better or 6 is better. For example, this in this also, like 1.1 is only the better one, but TON is directly proportional to the odor. How? Lesser the TON, that means less is the odor, that means we added less dilution water. But higher is the TON, that means higher was the odor and we needed to add higher dilution water. So TON is directly proportional to odor, FTN is inversely proportional to the good taste. Okay, so this is how we measure taste and odor. Now let's move on to the last topic, which is temperature. So we covered suspended solids, we covered color, we covered turbidity, we covered taste and odor. The fifth one is temperature. So the temperature is also a very important criteria, because at higher more the water temperature will be increasing, more the aquatic life will be dying. So the aquatic life of fish death will be more. So higher the temperature, lower the dissolved oxygen. At higher temperatures, the oxygen dissolves lesser into the water, because and the fish, the aquatic life, needs oxygen, right, to survive into the water. And the water, if it is having less oxygen, the amount of oxygen, how much is the amount of oxygen that's at least required to survival of aquatic life? That is 4 ppm. All right, so if the temperature becomes that high that even 4 ppm of oxygen are not is not there into the water, the fish death is there, and that is, it is certain into this water. So if fish death happens, we don't want these kind of water. This type of water is not even good for the fish health, then how can it be good for our health? So the temperature is very important quantity, and nowadays, because of global warming, because of climate change, the temperature into the like, which is the physical uh, entity that is taking lot of the temperature, that sea. See, we are at the ground, we are also suffering from this thing, but sea, because water has high latent like specific heat capacity, right? So if that means if it takes heat from the surrounding, it has high capacity to retain it, and more the heat it is absorbing, that means more the death is of the aquatic lives. That's why you are seeing that there are dead corals everywhere, because corals could not survive, because there is higher temperature, there is no more oxygen into the water. Now the fishes are also disappearing. So these are all because of the temperature, because of the climate change. So temperature should also be in a certain control, so that fishes can survive. So temperature is also a important physical parameter. And yeah, with this we had the summary that suspended solids, okay, unit I didn't tell you, it's milligram per liter. These in 1 liter, how many milligrams of suspended solids are there? Turbidity, you have measurement will be filtration or drying, okay. So like you will be taking some part into the some water into the beaker, you will be putting it into from the funnel, and in the funnel you will be adding filter paper. So some part will be retained onto the filter paper, right? That's suspended, and the part which comes after that into the filter, into the beaker, will be the dissolved solids. So the part which came upon the filter paper is the suspended solids. But yeah, we have done filtration, now it's in wet condition. We have to know the weight of that suspended solid, so we'll be drying it, oven drying on 105 degrees Celsius to 110 degrees Celsius. Okay, so this will be the oven drying, and after oven drying it for 24 hours, we'll be measuring the suspended solids weight. So we'll be calculating the weight, and this is how filtration plus drying will bring you to the suspended solids amount, milligram per liter. And then turbidity unit is NTU, and the measurement type is nephelometer. If the measurement type is turbidimeter, it's JTU. Color is TCU, and the measurement criteria is known as calorimeter. Okay, you have to remember this. And then temperature in degrees Celsius, and thermometer will be used. Taste, qualitative, sensory evaluation, I mean every individual will be checking it by their senses, their tongue. And then odor is also a qualitative. Qualitative means you can't simply say that this is the only right answer. Other person can say, okay, this is in this the taste is not there, but in this one taste is there. So these are qualitative, depends on the subject. And odor is the yeah, it depends on the threshold odor test, and just I discussed that. And with that, we have finished our physical parameters, and in next lecture we'll be continuing with the chemical parameters, which are TDS, pH, alkalinity, hardness, other things are also there, conductivity. So we'll be doing that. I hope you guys understood the water quality, physical parameters especially, and let's meet on into the next lecture. Thank you.